Hello and thanks for joining us for our mid-morning edition of Arirang News. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start with a look at the day's headlines. In May or early June, U.S. President Donald Trump says that's the time frame for his highly anticipated summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. President Trump vows quick action following the alleged chemical attack in Syria, saying major decisions will be made in hours. Russia and Syria say there's zero evidence an actual attack took place. Plus, gridlock at South Korea's National Assembly. A session of lawmakers questioning government officials is called off as the rival parties remain locked in a standoff over a variety of issues. Our top story this morning, though, U.S. President Donald Trump has confirmed that his meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will take place as agreed, although it may happen later than originally anticipated. He also spoke about the chance for the two sides to make a fresh start after years of going toe-to-toe. Jae starts us off.
President Trump says he plans to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un next month or in early June in order to hopefully reach a deal on denuclearizing the regime. Trump made the remarks at a cabinet meeting on Monday, expressing optimism over the talks and what the summit could mean for the future.
North Korea, by the way, as you've probably seen, and we've been in touch with North Korea, we'll be meeting with them sometime in May or early June, and I think there'll be great respect paid by both parties, and hopefully we'll be able to make a deal on the denuking of North Korea. If they've said so, we've said so. Hopefully it'll be a relationship that's much different than it's been for many, many years.
This comes after the White House had previously said President Trump would meet with Kim Jong-un before the end of May. Trump said direct talks should have happened years ago, but stressed that he was looking forward to the summit.
This should have been done by other presidents, and they decided they didn't do it. They couldn't have done it. But it would have been a lot easier if it were done 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, a lot easier than now. But we have a meeting that is being set up with North Korea, so that'll be very exciting, I think, for the world.
Over the weekend, the White House confirmed North Korea had told the U.S. that it was willing to discuss the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, offering a clearer picture of the agenda for the talks. However, observers remain cautious despite the easing tensions, with John Bolton officially starting his position as Trump's national security advisor on Monday, replacing H.R. McMaster. Bolton had previously outlined his advocacy of an attack on North Korea. Many hope his case for striking North Korea first will not negatively affect the upcoming summit. Jae, Arirang News.
Now, looking to garner some international support ahead of its back-to-back summits with South Korea and the United States, North Korea is pressing ahead with its diplomatic charm offensive. This time in Russia, North Korean Foreign Minister Yong-ho held talks on Monday in Moscow with Russia's Security Council Secretary Nikolai Patrushev. Officials say the pair discussed the challenges facing regional security and stability in the Asia-Pacific region, as well as the upcoming Inter-Korean summit. On this Tuesday, Ri will meet with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov to discuss bilateral relations, with the focus mainly on issues related to the Korean Peninsula. North Korea has reiterated that the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula could be resolved if all the parties move forward in step, in unison. According to Seoul-based Yonhap news agency, a North Korean official at the Non-Aligned Movement Summit held in Azerbaijan last week made such remarks when asked about North Korea's denuclearization. It follows a stance made by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un at his summit with the Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing in late March. There, Kim said if denuclearization can be reached if South Korea and the U.S. create an atmosphere of peace and stability while taking progressive steps forward with the North for the realization of peace. South Korea's Unification Minister says North Korea seems to be aware of the international community's thoughts on denuclearization and displayed a bit more sincerity regarding the matter. He also highlighted the importance of putting interactions with Pyongyang back on track. Jaein with the details.
Meeting with reporters on Monday, South Korea's Unification Minister Cho Myung-kyun said the most important goal for the April 27th Inter-Korean Summit is to have an open and frank conversation between the leaders to build trust. Even more so as the meeting comes after over a decade of frosty relations, and the two leaders, South Korean President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, are meeting face-to-face for the very first time. Denuclearization will definitely be on the table, Cho said. And when asked whether Pyongyang shares the same notion of denuclearization with Seoul, Cho suggested the North seems to be well aware of the international community's views. According to Cho, unlike in the past, the North Korean side was attentive to the South Korean delegation's remarks on denuclearization. The minister said that Seoul, Pyongyang, and Washington could possibly have a trilateral summit after the U.S. North Korea summit in May, but it remains to be seen whether six-party talks will also resume. To pursue sustainable inter-Korean relations, Cho said institutionalizing any type of agreements the two Koreas settle on will be crucial. He added Seoul will do as much as possible to restore interactions and cooperation with the North within the range of international sanctions. South and North Korea are well into their preparations for the April 27th summit. They plan to hold additional working-level talks this week on security, protocol, and media coverage for the summit, as well as establishing a hotline between the leaders. High-level delegations from Seoul and Pyongyang could meet next week, possibly Wednesday, to narrow down the focus of the summit. They're also likely to set a date for the very first phone conversation between President Moon and North Korean leader Kim to take place before the summit, as agreed between the two Koreas in early March. Jaein, Arirang News.
Now, looking ahead, after the Inter-Korean Summit at the end of this month, on April 27th, another talking point becomes boosting economic cooperation between the two Koreas. Does the diplomatic thaw mean the South and North are back in business? Our Park Hee-jun spoke to some experts for their perspective.
The main agenda for the Inter-Korean Summit is denuclearization and establishing a lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula. But when those matters are settled, the next step is the economy. Experts on North Korea say that discussions on renewing economic cooperation between the two Koreas are necessary, as it's a key factor in inter-Korean relations. While the tough set of international sanctions on North Korea remains in place, economic exchanges are limited to humanitarian aid, cultural exchanges, and healthcare. But even for those businesses to go ahead successfully, experts are emphasizing the need to reduce the role of the government.
The reopening of inter-Korean relations calls for a new form of South-North economic cooperation, which can be achieved through downsizing the central government's role and strengthening the roles of private enterprises and local authorities. It will lead to sustainable and healthy economic ties that don't waver according to status of bilateral relations.
South Korea will also have to prepare for a market change in North Korea.
Relieving the nuclear tensions means that North Korea is on the path of becoming a normal nation with reduced investment risks. Even though South Korea wants exclusiveness, it will have to compete with other countries for North Korean resources, mainly underground resources. Many players will be eyeing the market, and the North will have more bargaining power.
Experts say that the 3 months after the Inter-Korean Summit will be critical in building economic ties. Along with continued talks, establishing a joint organization will gradually lead to the two nations' economic reunification. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
South Korean Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa will sit down with her Japanese counterpart on Wednesday to discuss their bilateral relations and North Korea's nuclear issue. Japanese Foreign Minister Taro is visiting South Korea for 2 days starting Tuesday. This is according to sources within Seoul's foreign ministry. Kono is also expected to meet with other senior government officials to discuss the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. He is also expected to ask Seoul to raise the issue of Japanese abductees in North Korea during the upcoming inter-Korean summit. Another big issue surrounding relations between Seoul and Washington is their bilateral free trade deal. Speaking during a cabinet meeting on Monday, U.S. President Donald Trump said the recently renegotiated FTA is going to be a, quote, very fair deal. He added that although the two sides have a long way to go, they made tremendous progress, referring to the agreement that was reached in principle last month. Seoul agreed to further open its market to American auto companies in return for South Korea's exemption from new U.S. tariffs on steel imports. Now for a look at stories making headlines around the world. And President Trump says he will soon decide on America's response to a suspected chemical weapons attack on Syrian civilians. For more on this and other international news, let's turn to our No Aram. So Aram, Washington is again pointing the finger very directly at the Assad regime and his allies, namely Russia and Iran. They deny flatly that any chemical attack actually took place. So this diplomatic fallout continues.
That's right, Mark. Speaking during a cabinet meeting on Monday, Trump again condemned Saturday's apparent attack as, quote, heinous. Aid groups on the ground in Douma say more than 40 civilians were killed by what they described as poison gas. Just over a year ago, Trump ordered dozens of cruise missiles to be fired at a Syrian airbase after declaring the Assad regime had used a banned gas on civilians. In Monday's cabinet meeting, he did not rule out another U.S. military attack on Syria, adding Russian President Vladimir Putin may also be held accountable for supporting Damascus.
Does Putin bear responsibility for this? He may, yeah, he may. And if he does, it's going to be very tough. Very tough. He'll pay a price. Everybody's going to pay a price. He will, everybody will.
Mr. President, is U.S. military action, is it off the table as it relates?
Nothing's off the table. Nothing's off the table.
Syria and its allies, Russia and Iran, have all denied there was any chemical attack. The Russian military also said its officers had visited the apparent site of the attack in Douma and found no evidence to back up reports of poison gas being used. Amid the deliberations at Washington, the US and Russia clashed at the UN Security Council, which was meeting on Monday to discuss the issue. The US envoy Nikki Haley said Washington will respond to the alleged attack regardless of whether the UNSC takes action or not. Russia's UN ambassador Vasily Nebenzia warned America of, quote, grave repercussions if it carries out an attack against Syrian government forces. In other news, the approval rating for Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's cabinet has dropped once again as he grapples with multiple scandals. An NHK poll conducted over the weekend shows support for Abe's cabinet at 38%, dropping 6 points from the previous month. Abe has been in hot water over a cover-up of the Japanese military's activity logs in Iraq more than a decade ago. Out of the 1,200 people surveyed, 66% of respondents said they found the government's handling of documents problematic, while 5% said they did not. Just over half of the respondents also said they did not think the principle of civilian control of Japan's self-defense force functioned properly, compared to 5% who thought it did. Confidence in Abe's government has been fading recently amid the document cover-up, a cronyism scandal, as well as his push to change Japan's pacifist constitution. A school bus crash in northern India has killed at least 23 children, some as young as 4 years old, as well as 4 adults. Monday's accident also left 11 children injured, 2 of them who are in critical condition. Initial reports indicated the bus driver was speeding as he took the children home and lost control, plunging more than 60 meters from a mountain road into a gorge in the Himalayan foothills. Fatal accidents are common in India, which is notorious for reckless driving and lack of safety measures.
Now we're going to go back to some domestic news. The prolonged standoff at Korea's National Assembly is taking a toll on legislative affairs. After the cancellation yesterday of the Prime Minister's policy speech on the government's extra budget bill, today a scheduled Q&A session with government officials has been put on hold as well. For more, we connect to our political correspondent Kim Min-ji, who joins us on the phone today. So Min-ji, still no sign of a breakthrough.
Mark, as of now, it appears not. The National Assembly, like you said, was scheduled to hold an interpellation session today for the next 3 days, but with rival parties unable to reach a compromise to end the standoff, that has been called off for now. There have been anticipation the questioning session would go on as planned, as the agenda was set back in late March when parties had agreed to hold a parliament session in April. And given that major issues are coming up, such as the Inter-Korean Summit talks and deliberation of the government's extra budget bill, for now it remains unclear when the Q&A session will get going again, and rival parties also need to set a new date for the Prime Minister's policy speech, which was cancelled yesterday. Since last Monday, Parliament has been at a standstill with rival parties at odds over how to amend the country's decades-old constitution and divided over contentious bills, such as revising the Broadcast Act to strengthen neutrality, as well as a bill that calls for the creation of an independent body to look into corruption among high-ranking officials.
Well, Min-ji, we must point out for our international viewers that this kind of gridlock is not uncommon in South Korea's National Assembly, but it does seem especially bad right now. In regards to the frayed ties, though, between the rival parties, any efforts there being made to try at least to reach a compromise?
Well, for now at least, the floor leaders of the main parties don't have any plans to meet each other. They met 3 times yesterday, but only reconfirmed their differences. So at this point, this paralysis seems as though it will linger for some time, with parties only playing the blame game. But with a stack of agendas to go through in the April session, such as amending the Constitution, as well as deliberating the government's extra budget bill, lawmakers are under pressure of their own. Some pundits say should rival parties leave the session like this, getting no work done, they will be subject to harsh criticism. So the question now is exactly when and how much each party will be willing to concede to normalize Parliament. Back to you, Mark.
Well, thank you very much, Min-ji, for that report from the National Assembly. Now, as a follow-up to Min-ji's report, President Moon Jae-in has urged the National Assembly to end its prolonged standoff and swiftly approve the supplementary budget. He says it's a key part of efforts to tackle youth unemployment here in South Korea and also to support regional economies hit by corporate restructuring. Our chief Cheongwade correspondent Moon Gon-young reports.
국민들께서 국무총리의 시정연설에 주목해 주시길 바라는 마음에서 수석 보좌관 회의를 시간을 늦췄는데 시정연설을 언제 하게 될지 모르는 유감스러운 상황이 되었습니다.
President Moon Jae-in began the weekly meeting of his top aides Monday an hour later than usual at 3 p.m. with what's become a one-too familiar message from the president to the parliament, a plea for bipartisan support. The president did not hide his disappointment over the political parties' failure to narrow their differences, triggering cancellation of a floor session that was scheduled for earlier this afternoon, during which Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon was expected to deliver a speech on the administration's proposal for a $3.7 billion worth supplementary budget. It's the second extra budget to be drawn up by the Moon administration since Mr. Moon took office last year and comes with a vow to create jobs and increase wages. While the supplementary budget will come from surplus tax revenues and will not require issuing new government bonds, its effect in tackling the stubbornly high youth unemployment, which the government sees as a development crisis, and supporting regional economies hit by corporate restructuring will be very significant, the president explained. The South Korean leader pointed out the importance of taking the emergency spending measure in a timely manner, stressing the need for the parties to end the standoff and normalize the parliamentary session.
4월 임시국회에서 추경 예산안이 의결돼서 정부가 신속하게 집행할 수 있도록 국회의 대승적인 결단을 부탁을 드립니다.
문건영, Arirang News, The Blue House.
South Korea's STX Offshore and Shipbuilding, once the world's fourth largest shipbuilder by orders, is staring down the barrel of court receivership after it failed to submit a self-rescue plan within the given deadline. Kim Hyo-sun reports.
STX Offshore and Shipbuilding and its union tentatively agreed on Tuesday to a proposed restructuring plan to keep the cash-strapped company afloat. The deal proposed by its main creditor, Korea Development Bank, and the government calls for a 40% reduction in its fixed costs, including a 75% reduction in labor costs through unpaid leave and reductions in wages and incentives. Yet the company's fate remains unclear, as the KDB has said it will put the troubled shipbuilder under court receivership, as the tentative agreement was reached after the deadline at 5 p.m. on Monday. It also said the company had failed to submit a written pledge for a self-rescue plan. Although the company says it can submit the pledge by Tuesday morning, its union is saying a final agreement will only be possible once the two parties reach a conclusion on detailed personnel restructuring. Furthermore, the union needs to explain the deal to its members. While STX Offshore and Shipbuilding was once the world's fourth largest shipbuilder by orders, it has been struggling with a sharp drop in orders following the global financial crisis. STX was put under court receivership in 2016, but graduated from the program in July 2017. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
South Korea has filed an appeal against a ruling by the World Trade Organization on its import restrictions on Japanese seafood affected by the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster. The Trade Ministry's decision on Monday comes after a WTO dispute panel ruled in October of last year that while South Korea's measures were justified, maintaining them violated WTO rules. Japan lodged a complaint with the WTO back in 2015 to challenge Seoul's import bans and additional testing requirements on fish caught from 8 prefectures near Fukushima.
Good morning. Seoul will have a partly to mostly sunny skies before some showers this evening. And Beijing will also see a big jump in temperatures from the morning low. And expect to have fine weather in the afternoon. Highs will be 5 to 6 degrees higher than yesterday under mostly sunny skies, along with normal air quality before rain falls in the evening hours. And the chilly single-digit morning lows in Gyeongju and Chuncheon will jump nearly 20 degrees, getting up to 23 degrees Celsius in Gyeongju, and Chuncheon will get up to 21 degrees. Seoul will also make it to 21 degrees with rain in the forecast in the evening. So a good amount of rain will soak the entire country from this evening until dawn tomorrow. But rain will not affect the temperatures this time, but we could see yellow dust blowing in tomorrow afternoon. With that, let's take a look at the international weather for viewers around the world. So most of South Korea will notice higher afternoon highs under partly sunny skies. Many parts of North Korea will receive showers, and that rain cloud will move down south. And as for the rest of Asia, winds will be calmer in Japan, but that's not going to last long. Pollen and strong winds will sweep in again soon. Meanwhile, a late burst of summer weather has hit Melbourne early this morning, but the hot weather is unlikely to stick around for a long time. Now heading to North America, snow threatens to hit New York City once again as the second week of April got off to a chilly start. And as for South America, other than Bogota, most cities will have mostly sunny skies on Tuesday. Taking you to Europe, rainy Moscow will bring chilly air to the country, but Tuesday's highs will be quite mild at 20 degrees Celsius. Lastly, to Africa, Tripoli and Cairo will have similar weather conditions under mostly sunny skies. And that's all the weather update for now.
Well, you still have a few more days left to catch the cherry blossoms around the country, and particularly here in Seoul. Yeouido is a popular destination to view the pretty pink flowers. But that's where we're going to leave the news for now. Our next bulletin is coming up at noon Korea time. So until then, goodbye.